Tonight's episode of This is VANCOLOUR was recorded just a day before the passing of former BC Premier John Horgan. John was an impactful leader whose devotion to improving the lives of British Columbians left a lasting, indelible legacy. On a personal note, it was an honor to have him as our program's very first guest. We wanted to take a moment to extend our deepest condolences to Ellie, Nate, Evan, and all of John's loved ones. Now on to tonight's program. Hey folks, my name is Mo Amir and this is VANCOLOUR, British Columbia's bona fide culture and politics TV talk show. Tonight, Tamara Taggart and Bowen Ma will be here to give us two different perspectives on parenting in politically precarious times. But first, has the public discourse, including from politicians and their proxies, become more toxic and more boorish to the point that it feels like we've lowered our standards when it comes to decency or even truth? Let's talk about it with a familiar face here on CHEK, a legendary Canadian broadcaster. She now provides media training and communications coaching at her firm, Lynda Steele Communications. The person who first put me on the radio, Lynda Steele.
Hello.
Lynda, hello. I've missed you.
I've missed you too.
The CHEK audience has missed you.
Oh, you know what? It's fun to be back in here. Got all the good vibes, all the people. It's great. It brings back good memories.
I love it. Well, thanks so much for being here. I've been meaning to ask you this. If I were to go into politics, run for public office, and let's say a reporter comes to my campaign headquarters and they want to talk to me, should I hide in the janitor's closet? Is that good communications?
I would say no. And you know what? I mean, we're in such a weird time. We're seeing the politics south of the border crazy.
Yeah.
Half of America is grieving and confused and angry and shutting off the news. But we're seeing it in Canada too. I wonder what's going to happen with our federal situation. Poilievre seems to be kind of taking a bit of a page out of the Trumpian playbook, and it's working for him.
He's got name calling for everyone, specific labels.
The tags and what have you. And
yeah.
so the question is, what is going on? Why is that resonating with people? And I'm trying to figure it out. And for me, I sort of track it back to when Trump first came on the scene. He was unusual, unconventional. He was a little toxic. His rhetoric was something we were like, what? We're not used to hearing this from a politician. And I think that kind of what it did was there's always been a wedge of people who agreed with him, who felt the same way he did. And I think that he gave them permission to sort of rise up from the weeds a bit and go, okay, I can also say things that are kind of misogynistic or racist or xenophobic or what have you, because, you know, someone who's very successful and powerful in the States is doing it. So I think he gave a bit of license to some of that. But then, you know, TikTok, we're moving forward. We get into the pandemic. People are freaked out. They're scared. In the beginning, we listened to Dr. Bonnie Henry and our provincial officials. And then people start going, oh, you can't tell me what to do. And we get back into this hyperpolarization where people are angry.
Right.
And I have relatives who didn't want to wear a mask and got on a plane and said, I refuse to, and you can't make me. And so I understand that people were feeling scared. They were feeling controlled. They didn't understand it. We are just now in this weird era where people don't trust the media. They don't trust politicians. They don't trust science, doctors. And it is difficult when you have big ticket issues that affect the whole world and you have half of the populace on this side and the other half over there, and never the twain shall meet. And I'm a bit afraid that we've crossed over into some new era where we're not going to be able to find the center again.
Wow. A dystopian analysis. I appreciate it.
Very negative.
I guess, you know, when you think about the toxicity or the boorishness of some of our political leaders, both here and in the United States, it also feels like the populace has a higher tolerance for accepting those things. Because certainly not every Trump voter is a racist misogynist.
No,
certainly not every
not. No.
Conservative supporter, panders to conspiracy theories. But we seem more willing to accept that stuff, right?
I think it depends on who you talk to. I think that a lot of people are just fatigued and confused and exhausted by this fire hose of nasty rhetoric that was just coming. It was just like crazy town. Every time you turned on the TV, it was like, what? they said, what? This happened, what? You know, and it gets to the point where you can't absorb it anymore because it's so nutty and it doesn't make sense. It's nonsensical. And I do think that it just got to the point where people felt numb and tired and checked out of it.
Yeah.
And so if it was your team that was saying the crazy things, you were like, yeah, you know,
right.
He's my quarterback, she's my quarterback. I'm going to vote for them regardless of what they're saying. Yeah, you always heard people say, I don't like the things Trump says. I don't like what he does. But, oh boy, the economy was so much better.
Some of those things used to be disqualifying.
Hugely disqualifying. Yeah. If you go back not that long ago to when Mitt Romney was running for president and he made a casual, offhanded comment about women in his administration, the binders full of women, well, game over, the whole thing was over. And it seems so naive and gentle and crazy now to think that that was something that sort of negated someone's opportunity to lead the country.
So now please correct me, because I feel like media training is so much about being somewhat proper, saying the right things, or at least using the right language. But now in an environment where you can basically say anything, you can even take it back, you can even say something that's not true. What is the value of something like media training?
Because the one thing that I always tell people when I'm doing performance coaching or media training, regardless of if it's a politician, a doctor, a CEO, is to be authentic. Now, the Trump thing worked because he was very authentically himself. He was very unfiltered and people thought he was real. On the flip side, they thought that Kamala Harris was phony and an elitist and what have you. So what I try to tell people is in this super hyper partisan, hyper polarized era, you have to remember that you were elected to represent all constituents, not just the ones who voted for you. Yeah. So you have to think about who your audience is when you're talking, if you're doing a radio interview, even if you're tweeting something out. Who's receiving that and how are they receiving it? If it's someone who voted for you, they like your policies, they like your rhetoric, they like you probably, or they like the guy who's your leader, so they're essentially voting for the leader. But don't forget that half of the people didn't vote for you.
Sure, yeah.
And you have to represent them. So you have to listen, you have to be authentic, you have to try to solve their solutions. This isn't a game where, you know, it's like the BC Lions and the Edmonton Eskimos. I mean, you now, once you have earned the privilege of representing your particular constituency, you must do it in a way that speaks to all voters, not just the ones that hew to your political ideology.
That makes a lot of sense. 20 seconds or less, what's the key to being authentic?
The key to being authentic is to not filter yourself to the point where you sound too hesitant. You have to really just say what you mean it and don't talk over people's heads. Don't use the kind of language that is unique to your specific business or frame of reference. I mean, you really have to just be as authentic, as honest, and as thoughtful as possible in a way that just you're talking to the neighbor over the fence. You're not necessarily talking to your peers or to your boss. You're talking to the masses.
Lynda, I'm going to take that advice to heart. So nice to see you. Thanks so much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Folks, if you need any media training, she's one of the best in the business. Find her at Lynda Steele Communications. She is, of course, Lynda Steele. Now, after some business, it is hard enough being a mom. But what about being a new mom when you're a cabinet minister in the BC legislature? Bo Ma tells us about having baby poop on her pants during budget estimates. Up next.